Ladies and gentlemen, Glen E Friedman.
The idea of you as a photographer for me is black and white. I always associate your work with black and white photography, and
I don't know why you do that.
well, obviously you do use color a great deal, but
You know, if you look in the books in Fuck You Heroes, I started using Kodachrome 64, which is this incredibly great color slide film, which gives you the greatest reproduction that you could ever have from the 70s or whatever. And Skateboarder magazine gave me this great outlet from 14 years old on to have stuff published until they ran out of money and they started using more black and white. But at the time, I didn't really understand. But I shot color almost all the time. And then in the days of hardcore punk rock, there were no outlets. All the fanzines only used black and white photos. So I started shooting in black and white because there was no, we didn't have the ability to transfer it to black and white and have it still look good, So to say, I love color, but I learned from Craig Stesick, when you're going to use color, use it for a reason. Make the colors be bold, make it be there should be a good reason for it to be there.
at any stage in the game, did you think that you just kind of met somebody that might change because you did meet somebody that changed the course of skating history, for instance?
No, I think, the thing was with a lot of these people is I don't know how, but I became friends with most people before I shoot them. I hope that when people look at my shots, but I take what I do really seriously, even though sometimes it's not that serious of a thing, because again, I see it as a a personal responsibility of mine to share these cultures with other people. And it's and if someone else is going to look at it, I think I kind of have to do a really good job to do it. You bring up the skateboarders again. I think part of it came from that, because I started hanging out with these guys when I was 12, 13, 14, and they're all a couple years older than me. So the truth of the matter was, if I didn't take really good pictures, I wouldn't be allowed to go where they were going. I would get my ass kicked. I would get in trouble. They'd just be I wouldn't have the respect that, that they all demanded from everyone that was around them, and it was a really, a lot of peer pressure, a lot of gang mentality. It was a lot of weird things going on. So that kind of made me realize that I have to do something that is, you can't make an excuse for it. It has to be really great. I have to make it they cannot deny how great my pictures are. Skateboarding was a big inspiration. It's where it all came from. Skateboarding, like Dalek said, it's a very creative outlet, right? Skateboarding is it's something you do by yourself. It's an athletic form, and it's really about you and figuring out what your own limitations are. You know what I mean? And your own creativity when it comes to tricks and riding and and style and all that kind of stuff. There's just so much different things involved.
Well, isn't there an atmosphere with skateboarding that it was anti-establishment?
Oh, absolutely. You were totally anti-establishment. You weren't allowed to. It wasn't first of all, the thing that people don't realize too is that parents. There were no parents involved because parents couldn't do it. It was something that was new, and that was the great thing about so many about punk rock at the time and about hip hop even at the time. There was no precedents. There weren't people before you that could tell you what to do because you were the ones inventing it. First roll of color slides I ever shot, and my first published photo came from this day. It wasn't this one though, and this shot is so much better. I think. Look at how the leaves are just surrounding Jay Adams, and just the pool and the coping and the color and just there's not, I don't know if you all agree, but I just really love this shot, and it's, October 1976, and, it just, and it was with no, this isn't the dog bowl, this is another pool that we found, and actually I found this pool and convinced Jay and this guy Paul Constantino, who were famous Dogtown guys at the time, or on their way to getting famous, to come skate this pool so I can get some photos of them at a unique pool and get something unique for the day, and I really like that shot a lot.
But are you personally drawn to those kind of people?
I guess so. I can't say who I'm drawn to. It just happens. It's you see people doing something incredible and that's inspiring you and that you think looks cool or is cool or is just energizing or opens your mind up a little bit, and you're drawn to it. You want to know more about it.
I think somebody's also said that you're the quintessential reportage photographer. You're almost documenting a war, in the sense of that on one side you've got them, and then there's us, and all of the groups that you've shot, I think, and all the photographs, most of them, apart from the new work that we'll talk about later, is you're representing this fuck you.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I mean, the whole deal was, it's like I said, it was my personal responsibility. I feel like I'm in this, I have to show it as accurately as I could. It's a part of my own culture. I wasn't an outsider shooting it. Like I said, I was offended by those people, who weren't a part of the culture, just coming in and grabbing a part of it and trying to sell it to other people. It's like, if you did it well, that's one thing, and maybe people could do it every once in a while, but most of the time I think you could see it in the work. I'm hoping that my work shows character. It's something that a lot of graphic artists don't remember anymore with their work, and with photography they just use photos as looking at it as a graphic art, but the reality is a picture is, to me, is there's composition, and character is so important, and the texture and just attitude. It's not just shooting something for the sake of it being shot. A lot of these people, to some people, these are a lot of celebrities now. When I shot them, most of them weren't, And I think that what I really like to do is that I kind of idealized what these people meant to me, and sometimes I would make them cooler than they really were, or I would try to, because I wanted more people to know about them. With the Beastie Boys were one of the first hip-hop acts I shot, but I of course knew them from their punk rock days, and they introduced me to Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin, and Rick Rubin knew my Black Flag work, and it just went on from there.
How do you think about the direction hip-hop is going?
When you say the direction hip-hop is gone, it's an interesting question, because right from the very beginning with hip-hop, it was really, it hit me like a ton of bricks in the face when I first hung out with certain rap artists. I couldn't, even in the early 80s, it was like money was always important to hip-hop. And it always was, no matter what anyone says. Even the political songs, is like a lot of the artists wanted to make money right from the start. So that tainted some of the creativity in some of them, and others, it didn't. But and that's because of the socioeconomic positions that people were in who were creating it, as opposed to a lot of punk rockers. Some of them were lower class, and most of them were upper middle class maybe. So the direction that hip hop took, it doesn't surprise me that much, but it's always been there, and there still are those rebellious artists out there. I mean, we're just not hearing about them. And hip-hop, as far as the violence is concerned, I mean, it just kept on, from the 80s, it was just going up every year, you know what I mean? It was just like escalating. And I was a part of that, because I thought it was interesting, but I thought it was also kind of exciting, kind of like gangster movies are. But it was an interesting lifestyle. But then all of a sudden I realized, I shot this one picture that's not in here, but I shot this one picture of this group called the South Central Cartel in, I think it was in the early 90s. And I guess it was after, when was I don't even remember when the big riots were, what year that was, but I went down there, and even these guys, I mean, I've met a lot of gangsters from hanging out with Ice-T, and I've seen way too many guns in my life, and I've never shot one myself, but they really scare the shit out of me, But being around them, I was with these guys, and even they were scared to take photos in their own neighborhood, And later on the day after I shot these photos of these guys, because what we're trying to do with those photos, where there's guns in the shots, it's like, at the time, I was trying to show this is someone else's reality, right? And you need to see this reality. So I shot these photos, we did this album cover in Gats We Trust, and then I went to the premiere of this movie, Menace to Society. And I was at the premiere, and I see this film, and it just woke me up. I just said, I'm never shooting a photo with guns in it ever again. Because first of all, a gun, just by its nature, you could shoot a picture of a gun on the floor and people are going to look at it and say, wow, that's a picture. Because it is such a fucking powerful instrument, and it could do so much harm, and it has such strength that it's like, it's too easy. Just using that makes you look at any picture that has a gun in it, and just like, it's, people look at it because the gun's in it. So, and because of that movie, and I saw how it was all of a sudden being glamorized, I thought I was maybe helping contribute to the glamorizing of guns in the culture. And I realized I had exposed it enough, I showed that side of the culture, I don't need to do that anymore. It's just, it's overdone, and okay, people got this message. And that movie made it really clear to me that people really got this message. Because I had met kids that were like the character O-Dog in the movie and people like that. And it's so sickeningly violent. And it's just like, again, I couldn't feel like I can't contribute to that at all anymore. I mean, I could help rappers who talk about that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to be, make it look so beautiful that there's a gun in the photo, And then, like in my book, The Idealist, you could see, every shot where there's a gun in the photograph, on the opposite page, there's the balance of it. You see the one guy, one of the shots I remember taking around that same time was a guy called Mello, standing in front of a grave. And the grave, it wasn't like a full stone, it was one of those ones that are just in the ground because they couldn't afford any better. But not only that, there's 2 people buried in the same grave site, and you look at the dates on it, and they're both under 20 years old. You know, it's really sad, but that's across from a picture that looks like, you know, semi-glamorous photo of a gun, or could be considered that. I mean, in a way, you know, I mean, Goodfellas is not a glamorous movie, but there's glamorous parts about it, you know, and people could pick and choose what they want. But I mean, Scorsese made this film, and it was incredible because it really showed how ugly it was in the end, right? And I think that's how I rationalized my gun images later on and after the fact, but you know, I don't do that anymore. And so, I mean, if you're talking about money in hip hop, it's always been there. And you know, I happen to know some of those people, and that's what gets them off, you know, and that's what they like, and that's what they want to do. I mean, you know, whenever I get a chance to be around any of them, if, you know, anyone who knows me, I try and interject as much politics in their face as I can and try and get them to wake up if I can, you know. You know, my friend Russell Simmons, who has a lot of power in that, you know, he's vegan now. You know, he's been vegan for like 5 years, and he still does a lot of stupid stuff. And he's, you know, his clothing company still, you know, might use leather and things like this. But you know, you try and inspire people as best as you can. I mean, 10 years ago, I wouldn't let anyone do anything in front of me that I didn't like. And nowadays, you know, I'm a little bit more. I'm not necessarily accepting, but I'm understanding that everyone has to find things in their own time. So I can't be a total vegan fascist all the time, you know.
Your first influences in music after, obviously you did Dogtown, and you moved away, and you said that you seek out people or groups or...
Well, I think the thing was in, you know, skateboarders were very into music. I mean, people used to bring music with them all the time. You know, even Tony Alva used to have like this contraption way pre-Walkman days, you know, these big headphones on them where you'd have radio headphones in your ears while you could skate. So music was always a very big part of that. And then when the 70s came, I mean, and everyone, you know, my generation, we were listening to Jimi Hendrix, Ted Nugent, you know, Led Zeppelin, early Aerosmith, and, you know, just, you know, it was the heaviest stuff that you can get at the time. And it was actually, we listened to the more up-tempo, fast stuff. So when punk rock came along, it was just that much more aggressive and so much like what the Dogtown guys were doing. I mean, you know, you had, you know, the Sex Pistols' anger was nothing new to a Dogtown skater, you know, or to any skateboarders at the time. It was all the same thing. So it was like, it was just a natural progression, you know? And then I heard Black Flag, and it was like, forget it. Now it is really all over. This is something that is so incredible and so hard. Could you pause it on that picture? That, you know, it was some of the first national and international documentation that bands like Black Flag got was through skateboarding. And that's why so many skaters became punks, because they learned about the music through the magazines. And I was very proud that I was a big part of that, because of course, you know, the publishers and the editors of the magazine still wanted to put Fleetwood Mac in there, you know, in their record reviews. And I would have, you know, a Black Flag record in there for their record reviews. But again, you know, I took it very seriously, and it's something I really wanted people to know about. So I wasn't only trying to get into fanzines. You know, I was calling Rolling Stone and sending pictures. I would just make prints and send them off to the magazine, and you know, and I would never get it. Even in Newsweek, I said, "This is newsworthy. What is going on in LA? We're having riots. Police are coming, threatening me, threatening my friends. You know, people didn't know about this stuff, and it wasn't really reported. It was reported in the local news a little bit. I said, this is really newsworthy shit. On top of it, the music is incredible. It's inspiring me to do what I do." It's like, you know, let's, you know, could you give it some coverage? It deserves it. And, you know, they just return your photos with not even a fucking letter, you know, and it just, and of course, you know, by the time they finally do write about Black Flag, I'm into hip hop, you know, it's already gone. It's like, they're not even worth listening to anymore. And I love them, my favorite band of all time, you know. I love this photo so much. I mean, I love most of the photos that I have in the books, but just the composition of this photo, and I mean, obviously there's some luck involved here, but I'm waiting. And I so rarely shot vertical photos, but it was probably because in the magazines, you know, the composition, you had to get a vertical shot to fill a full page, and I didn't want a half page. I want a fucking full page, or I want a cover, you know.
And was punk music obviously the first music that kind of really, did that kind of enthrall you, as you said?
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing with punk rock is that you're right there. You're in the audience, but you're not really in the audience. You could sit on the stage like I did sometimes. I'm obviously leaning on the stage at this point. You know, my learning how to take photos of bands, I'm leaning on the stage and taking the shot. Nowadays, I would never take a photo like this, although I love it, and the energy, and just Chuck's bass framing Greg, and Henry framing Greg, and everyone stepping in the right, I mean, there's just too much good stuff about that photo as far as I'm concerned, and the intensity of it. But nowadays, I look at a shot like that, and I'm happy that you see a little bit of an audience member in the background, but so many people shoot live photos now, and you don't see the audience. And it's like, and I know I've shot photos of bands at sound check, and a band like Black Flag, you can't tell the difference between their sound check and their live show. I mean, this is a live show, but when I noticed that one day, I started saying to myself later on that, you know, I got to start incorporating more of the audience in the photos so people could really tell that this is the real thing, you know. And then also I stopped using a flash because, you know, every time you take a flash in a club, it lights up the whole club. And you kind of bring more attention to yourself sometimes as a photographer. And I'm sometimes, you know, since I've had books published and stuff like that, people will come up to me after the show instead of the band and say, oh, aren't you Glenn or something. It's horribly embarrassing, you know. It's really, you know, it's like, pay attention to those guys. I'm just trying to make you guys notice them, not notice me. I mean, this is a great shot at CBGB's. That's Ian Mackay and Minor Threat and all those people around him. An incredible moment, and it's good in its day, but, you know, as we've gotten older, things kind of slow down a little bit, so you don't need a flash to freeze everything so much, and you get really nice texture and beautiful images, you know. I don't want a photo to be sterile, but I do want it to be perfect. And you got to understand that difference, you know. And it's a really big difference to me, you know. Like with all photos, the idea is to take one, you know, 500th of a second or 1/60th of a second and let it tell the story of the whole night. And if you can't do that, if it's not doing that, then, you know, it's like, it might be a good photo, but it's like, you know, and it's not that I love all my photos either. I'm very critical of my own work, but most of the stuff that makes in the books I like.
Sometimes digital photography dumbs down content. Would you agree?
No, I don't think it's because of digital photography. I think maybe digital photography, I mean, if someone's raised on it, it's not going to make them lazy. You know, if I use digital, I think that I'm being a little lazy, maybe because it's so forgiving and you could see what you got right there. I mean, to this day, you know, when I shoot film, because I don't use any prep or any help, or I don't have any agencies or anything helping me, you know, I don't believe it until I have it in my hand. And when I drop it off at the processing place or whatever, you know, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that the photos came out okay every time to this day.
You don't do it yourself?
Well, I'm talking about developing. No, I don't develop my own film. And Kodachrome, there's only, you know, and as a Kodachrome now, there's only one place in the whole country that does it, somewhere in, you know, Kansas or something. But I mean, I shoot E6 film sometimes, which you can get developed at local labs, but I haven't done my own processing in many years.
You're still using film even till today?
Well, I don't shoot as much anymore as I used to, but I still use film. I found, you know, I mean, the last few years, digital is definitely, I think digital is an incredible thing, and most people should shoot digital because most people don't know how to take good photographs that deserve film. Film is very, you know, it's very necessary for, you know, certain kinds of work. But for most work, for news work and stuff like that, and for commercial work, I just don't see that, you know, it's great that there's digital because it's less harm to the environment, you know, and it just, you know, you can do what those people do where they shoot like hundreds of pictures of just one object, you know, in order to get the one that they use. Wasting all that film is a horrible thing. So, and digital technology is all that's necessary, you know. I shoot film almost exclusively. I don't own a digital camera. My wife has a digital camera that I use just for family stuff and for fun pictures, you know, and things like that. But and originally they kind of took the place of Polaroids for me, you know, digital, because it was something that was instant and you know, and it was good in that way. But you know, yeah, I'm using film when it's important, you know, for the most part. But I am impressed with what digital technology is allowing you to do these days. That's kind of, it is kind of mind-boggling what it's, you know, the sensitivity to those sensors that are in there. And maybe eventually I'll be able to use all my old Pentax lenses on a digital camera, and maybe I'll, you know, make that over. But, you know, it's, you know, when you grow up a certain way with a certain kind of film, you know.
You always had a Pentax?
I've always had a Pentax, yeah. I mean, I used to use, my very first camera was a Pocket Instamatic, I mean, after the Polaroid, and I shot on that and submitted pictures on that to magazines, but they wouldn't take them, and I found out you needed big boy film, so I borrowed a camera, and I shot one of the pictures I'll show you, and that's in, two of the pictures actually, they're in here. I took with my first published photo was with a borrowed camera. It was, I don't even remember what kind, but I had a 28mm lens on it. And I took one roll of color and one roll of black and white, and I got that full page subscription ad in Skateboarder magazine from it. And I got other beautiful shots from it too that no one ever published. You know, the other thing was, I think that, not to sound like I have too much of a chip on my shoulder, but I was so young when I started, I just felt like I always had to prove myself, you know, and I was looking at magazines, and in the 70s, I think, you know, Life magazine and Look magazine from the 60s and Surfer magazine had these incredibly beautiful pictures, and it was just so important. You could see how the composition, you know, was so important to the image. You know, I think it's great that more people nowadays do art than ever. And I think it's really great in one way and really horrible in another way. The thing that's great is that people are expressing themselves and they're doing these, you know, things that make them feel good and communicate to other people. The thing that I don't like about it, and that kind of bothers me, is that some people feel the need to be better than others or to share it with people when it should just be on the wall in your house. Because how many people have gone to the movies and you see a movie and it's a total piece of shit and you just wasted 2 hours of my life. I really don't like that. And I feel that way the same way about a lot of art that I see in magazines or in books or even things that you read in magazines. It's like, people don't take the time to hone their craft and to take it really seriously and do something really important. It's like, you're asking me to look at it. You were in a gallery or something, and I just see so much shit in the walls, and it's offensive to me because it's really hard for me to get into a gallery. I've had shows all over the world, but they're never like really fancy shows. It's usually fans do the stuff and say, Glenn, we're going to get everyone here, we'll fly you over, and we'll get the expenses paid, and is that good enough for you? And I'll say, hell yeah, I've never been there, let's go, and let's do it. But I want it to be done respectfully. I don't want the photos up in a coffee house, where people are going to be eating and vomiting and at a show or something like that. I don't need that. I want it in a respectful place because I respect the work. I take it seriously. You don't have to, but at least I want to put it in a respectful setting so people could, take a minute to look at it,
Do you think that photography still has the potency to incite?
I hope so. I think people look at some of these photos. I don't know how they feel about it out here in this audience, but people tell me, and I see them, and I still see an integrity that comes through the images that people can still relate to and still be inspired from. Yeah, authenticity. Thank you very much. I think you see that authenticity because, again, it was something I cared about, and I really believed in, and I really loved, and I still do. You saw that picture of LL. I was at UCLA at the time, and I just brought him to the steps by the campus. And we took a picture. He wasn't really that well known yet. He's gone on to do other things, but at the moment I shot him, it was very real, and he had that integrity then. And if I was lucky enough to capture that at that time, I'm just so happy to be able to share it with people. And you could see where people went from then, and some people have done better, some people have done worse, some people aren't even with us anymore, It really is all about inspiring rebellion in other people. I want to inspire rebellion. That's what it is all about to me, and for, whatever it takes. And even if it's a photograph like this, the cover of my book, The Idealist, it's just about art, and inspiring people to come back to a base, and just inspiring people is what it's about,
So I've stalled this because this is Ralph Nader, isn't it?
Yeah, Ralph Nader and Al Sharpton, up at Al Sharpton's old place before it got burnt down.
When did you become, in your head, more politically? Are you kind of well known for that?
Well, I think I became more politically involved. I think, even in the days of skateboarding, there was a political undercurrent in some of the stuff that Craig Stesic was writing. And as a 12-year-old, I might not have recognized it right away, but later on I did, because he inspired rebellion in his articles, and it kind of inspired me. But it was punk rock, hardcore punk in particular, Dead Kennedys, Jello Biafra, and Black Flag, and people like this. And even the stuff the English bands were doing, was kind of, it woke up the political side of us. Again, you're just a teenager. What the hell do you know about politics? In America, you know nothing because they don't let you learn it in school for the most part. When I was in school, I never read anything about, Marxism or anything like that until I was in college when I took it and I was allowed to. They don't encourage you knowing that much about other political systems until college, it seems, in America. So, punk rock really opened my eyes to that. And luckily I was at college at the same time punk was going on. And, and I was really inspired by learning these new things about different political systems that have existed and do exist in the world, even if they didn't work out idealistically the way they were supposed to. It just opened up your mind, and I was just like, Jesus, hey, more people got to know about this. And that's what's so great about punk back then. It wasn't just a sound. It was about, it was obviously an attitude, but it was about, people learning and opening up their minds and just being, becoming exposed to new things, Even if in the early days, before hardcore, before it got all tough guys, it was kind of scary for, me, a 11th grader coming in from a Jersey suburb to, to the Mud Club on White Street, in 1978 and seeing, drug addicts and, men making out in the street and stuff like that. I'd never seen stuff like that before, but it was all open your mind, and it just showed you that there's other worlds. And that, the punk rock did that for me. Like, there wasn't, MTV wasn't showing stuff like that. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have a million magazines where you could read about these things. It's just like, when you were going to punk rock shows, you were experiencing things that you just really couldn't experience anywhere else. There was no such thing, and, it's a beautiful thing too, because it really, you had to fight to find stuff out, but it made you appreciate it that much more.
Well, would you like to talk about the Liberty Street protest? This, I think, it's important subject for you.
I think I could talk about the Liberty Street protest for a minute. That friend of mine, Russell Simmons, owned this apartment looking over Ground Zero, And I just had this idea. I mean, these big, beautiful windows overlooking Ground Zero. And as soon as we were allowed to get in this building, I thought, millions of people come to this place like it's, like, I don't know what, a burial ground or what they might think of it as that, but it's really the main reason the main excuse they use for all these wars, was what happened on 9/11. And everyone who lives in New York knows that most people in New York did not want retaliation like we had. And people, visit this place from all over the world to see, wow, this is why they're, fighting war everywhere. And especially people from middle America, they like look at it like for affirmation. Yeah, this is George Bush is doing the right thing. Look at this hole. They still haven't built anything here, and my friend lived right across the street from it. We used to look at it all the time. He moved out on September 1st. It was incredible. He bought this incredibly way too expensive house in the suburbs of New Jersey, and I called him up that morning at 10 o'clock, and I said, it's the best investment you ever made, because you probably wouldn't be alive. I mean, they had fashion shows going on. I'm sure they would have been going in and out of their house at that time of day when all that happened. But so anyways, as soon as I can get into that house, when they finally started letting people back in, and they were doing construction in that house, I said, please let me do this. Please, could you do this? I have this idea. I want to put signs up. And as soon as I got I knew what we were allowed back into this place, I mean, I couldn't even sleep. I went to Kinko's. I called them at 6 o'clock in the morning and emailed them peace signs and different things just as a test run to put in the windows, just to see what would happen. And I just get down there thinking I'm going to put one thing in the window or thinking I'm going to do one. I just covered like 8 windows with these 4-foot peace signs immediately. And I go downstairs and I look at it and I'm just freaked out. I'm scared by what I just did, because the picture does absolutely zero justice to what we did at the Liberty Street protest. Because when you actually stood at Ground Zero and looked up at the signs, because the first round that I did at Kinko's that morning stayed up for like a week, and it got a little bit of news coverage in New York, and people were just like making fun of it. Oh, but when the real signs came up, New York, no newspapers, nothing covered it in New York, and it was there. We had it up there for the Republican convention. People told me in Italy and in Sweden and in Switzerland and all around the world, people told me that when they came to cover the Republican National Convention, a lot of people saw this sign. And I went down there for protests during the convention, and people would be interviewing people there, Fox News, whatever. I said, you see those signs up there? There's some people who are against this war, or against what the Republicans are doing. You might want to have that in the background or something. And a guy, from Fox News just told me, get the fuck out of here. What are you, anti-American or something? And, I'm like, gee, you're really intelligent. You work for a fucking news agency, and you don't want to show what people are talking about right here at Ground Zero. So anyways, out of all my photography and everything I did, I'm very proud of a lot of stuff, but those signs that we made that were 8 feet tall and stood up there, not only through the convention, but through the election, I was really, really proud of that. I mean, millions of people got to see it, and right in that spot. And I'm telling you guys, when you go down there and you stood there and looked up at those windows, these 8-foot signs, I mean, it was just like, it was so disrespectful to your attendance in the area. It's like, if you're standing down there and you see these signs, it doesn't look like here. They were so massive. They were just like, just shitting on you. I mean, it was so big. It was so aggressive. It was just like, I was scared myself looking up at it. I said, I can't believe that we actually did this. And we're like, and police, and people came and threatened the building, and the building didn't, people started moving in like, on lower floors, but Russell didn't have it. And then the president of the building was okay with it. And the president of the building was on the 6th floor, the co-op president or whatever. And his partner or another friend of his was on the floor above. And they said, yeah. And that stuff stayed up there for, at least a couple of months. And then eventually, I think after the election, I was told I had to take the stuff down because people were living in there. And there was one asshole Republican in the building, who just was really offended by it. And they said that people were, knocking on the doors and giving them a hard time, at the front. So I said, okay, I just dragged my feet as long as I could to let's stand up. I'm getting sick of standing. I mean, sitting. But, as long as I could, I dragged my feet. And so when they told me to take it down, I did. And then but in the upper right-hand corner, there's a sign that says dissent is patriotic and the peace sign. And I actually left those there, and they were there just until like January of this year. So they were there for like a good year and a half, or I don't know when the election was, a couple years up. But it was there, and they were pretty big, and at nighttime they had lights behind it and stuff. It was a pretty proud achievement, non-photography wise, and I could never, as much as I like to think I'm a decent photographer, I could never really get a picture that did that justice. You kind of had to be there. We could talk about the last project if you want to, the recognized stuff with the clouds, because people might see that as a little odd relative to the rest of the. I mean, the thing is that I did this book, The Idealist, which was kind of my aesthetic. The Idealist kind of like, I did after I did Fuck You Heroes and Fuck You Too, and I thought, well, you know, I could do this, so I'm just going to do it. I wanted to show other young photographers that you don't just have to specialize in one thing. You could actually take, if you have vision, you could take beautiful pictures of anything, and that's really what I thought I could do and what I wanted to share with people, and that's what I did with the Idealist book. And you know, it kind of got the idea out there, and I began to see more young photographers doing different kinds of stuff, and it was nice, you know. And but you know, years went by, and there was just like, you know, all this shit photography still out there that just really offended me. And I'm just, you know, I see particularly a lot of these, you know, English fashion magazines and you know, lifestyle magazines, whatever you call it, using like, you know, and just so much advertising using like this Terry Richardson type shit, and just like, you know, lowbrow, like whatever you think, you know, just out of focus, non-composed, you know, it's all about the Emperor's New Clothes, you know, it's just total shit. People think that it's good because everyone says it's cool. I don't want to follow that, and I want anyone who ever reads any of my books not to follow that shit. And don't buy my book if you like that shit. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me, you know. I want people to, and so, you know, I still see all this stuff coming out, and there's a lot of young artists, a lot of people that I like, that I'm even friends with. They have stuff in galleries and stuff, and I'm looking at the wall, and I'm like, this is fucking comic book shit we did in 7th grade. It's on a wall. It's incredible. I can't even, you know, I can't even beg my way into a gallery, and this stuff is taking up wall space. Or so many artists that are really talented. You know, I believe, you know, I really like I said before, like things that take up a lot of, you know, that people take their time with, you know. So anyways, we're back to recognize. Okay, just the title. I wanted people to recognize, you know, composition, texture, and just beauty and real art again, you know. It was my way to go back to the masters, right? The clouds, to me, was something that was so incredibly beautiful that every single human on this planet could relate to. No matter where the fuck you live, anywhere in the world, you know what a cloud is. Now, you can't say that, you certainly can't say that about punk, you can't say that about anything else that I photograph, but you can't even say that about music, you can't say that about pictures of eggs. Some people might not have seen eggs, you know what I mean? You can't say that about clouds. There's nothing more universal. And the other thing that I wanted to do is like, you know, because I'm bored flying on planes, I'm looking out the window and I'm just seeing this incredible beauty out there. So I'm saying to myself, you know, I've got this reputation for being an insider and really being a part of whatever I shoot. Well, I don't fly planes, and it really had nothing to do with planes at all. It is about things that are always changing. It can never be duplicated. And again, early in my career, I learned if I wanted to be successful, I had to do something that no one else did. If you do something else that someone else can do, then why the fuck are they using you? It's because you're a good bullshitter, you take drugs with people, or you have sex with people, you do things with people to do things, you know, to get you in those places, to get in the door. That was not me. I was never going to be that type of person, so I had to separate myself some way. So with the clouds, again, they're totally universal. They're never duplicated. No one's going to be able to duplicate this photo ever again. And then I thought, just like I'm in with these bands, I'm going to be in the clouds. And every photo is taken inside the clouds, from within them. It's only a few moments when you're flying in coach in a 747 that you actually go past 20,000 feet or 15,000 feet where the clouds are. So I'm there by the window just waiting for those few moments, and I just start snapping like crazy. And that's only when you're lucky enough to have a nice cloudy day. You know what I'm saying? But I really concentrated on shooting pictures from within the clouds so I could be, you know, it's like heavenly and it's beautiful and it's something, you know, you just, you know, it could never be duplicated again, right? And just, you know, and okay, so now we're looking at the pictures themselves, and I wanted to really reintroduce people and people to be able to recognize, you know, composition and beauty in something that is totally universal, right? And you just can't deny it. But you could also, it's not just a picture of the clouds, because I even saw, and this is one of my, you know, they're all, the ones I put on here are kind of favorite ones, but this one is so incredible because you're just in the middle of so much, you know, and there's just so much going on in it, and the textures and the colors, but it's really only, you know, blue and white and gray, but then at the same time, you know, you see these unique things that you just can't even imagine are there, and you get to capture them. It's just like, I'm in awe of it myself. And again, the beauty of it, I want it to inspire other people, and I want people to think that, you know, don't believe everything you read, don't believe everything you see, but there are some universal truths, and I'm trying to bring people back to that with this book and with this work, because even in The Idealist, it didn't show people enough that, you know, it's photography, you know, that anyone could take beautiful photographs, and, you know, I don't know, I'm just babbling now. Or maybe I said it.
No, you aren't. Sounds great.
Is there any questions? That's it.